to it. So the cost sharing agreement that's before you this evening, I'll go through some of the overall terms that are outlined in your staff report. Feel free to follow along in there if that's easier, if you have it. The agreement this evening will only cover phases 1A and 1B of the new zoo. This is the first phase of delivery that includes all the key facilities, back-of-house operations, and the core elements around the Africa habitats. Under the agreement, we talk about that the city and society intend to enter into a future use and operating agreement for the project, essentially a lease operating agreement that we'll bring back at a future point in time. We do set the overall project budget based upon the finance plan you saw last month at about $302 million. Ultimately, if the project is terminated by the city prior to the receipt of the bond funds, which we talked about those in the finance plan last month, about $114 million in bond financing we'll need to secure for the project overall. So prior to the issuance of those bonds, if the city ultimately does decide to terminate the project, any donor contributions that are on deposit with the city would be returned to the society. In terms of the funding obligations, the society is obligated to secure the $50 million we talked about last month, and it's on the schedule of milestones, which I know you cannot see on your screen, but it begins with $12.5 million that was due or obligated by May 8th of this year, which we talked about last month the society has achieved. The next tranche of funds totaling cumulatively $17.5 million is due January 1st of next year, and ultimately by January 1 of 27 is the $50 million obligation. The city and society will also be cooperating on securing an additional $30 million towards the energy efficiency and animal care components of the project. We will be working with the society to establish a process for the acceptance of third-party in-kind donations of, say, materials or other goods that would be useful in the delivery of the project overall that could count towards that collective $80 million obligation. The city may suspend the design work along the way if the society fails to achieve any of the minimum funding milestone commitments that are laid out between now and January 1st of 2027. We have that ability to do that in order to slow the project down and wait for that funding, those funding milestones to be achieved. The society's other funding obligations, any donor funds that are committed or that come through after January 1st of 27 would be accounted for on a discounted basis based upon net present value calculation with a 4% discount. That way we're recognizing the time value of money of those funds. Funds that are received by the society, the actual cash themselves, needs to be transferred to the city on a quarterly basis beginning of October 1st of this year. So part of your resolution will be establishing that fund itself. As part of the resolution, as those funds come in, the finance director will be authorized to recognize those funds coming in and do automatic adjustments to the city's budget and the financial system to recognize those additional dollars. The society is responsible for transferring, though, the full $50 million prior to the issuance of the bond funds later in 27. If there is any debt financing that's utilized to secure any portion of that $50 million obligation, the society would be solely responsible for the repayment of that debt. Again, we do have the bond planned for the project, about $114 million in total. As we talked about last month, the society will be responsible for paying back 32% of that payment, of the annual debt service payments going forward. Under this agreement, the society's first payment will be due on the 1-year anniversary or 12 months after the opening of the zoo to the public. But overall, the society is responsible for a total of 30 annual payments back to the city. So that concludes the terms of the agreement. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Sam now.